It's the OG fact checker, and I know you're wondering who I am and what makes me a fact checker. Well, for 12 years, I tortured over 1,000 students, teaching them college-level writing as an adjunct with 3 of those 12 years as a writing tutor. This head is filled with information accumulated by fact-checking my students' papers or assisting students with conducting research. My beginnings took place here in Brooklyn, New York, and then I moved here to Queens when I was 8. I joined the United States Navy when I was 19 and served for 4 years during Desert Shield, Desert Storm in the intelligence field. I finished my 4 years supporting the submarine force out of Groton, Connecticut as an E4 or Petty Officer 3rd Class. I stayed in Connecticut, used my GI Bill to get my undergrad degree, and then took out a school loan to get my master's, both at state universities. Here's what's called the Blue Jackets Manual. It's given to recruits when you enter boot camp. I don't know if they still do this. And it's sort of a Cliff's Notes of everything you need to know and study to become a squared-away sailor. You can see how old it is, published in 1978. This was my rate, cryptologic technician, and my branch was administrative. There was an ongoing joke at the time that my rate was basically a yeoman with a clearance. I used to consider that an insult, not to be braggy, but you need to score high on your ASVAB to be a crypto tech. But I've discovered that being called a yeoman is a mixed bag in the compliments department, and I'll explain why in a later OG fact checker post. Back then, I really didn't know why it had to be Navy and not Army or Air Force. My uncle was in the Army during Vietnam. He was a reservist for 25 years before retiring, and he told me to go Air Force. But I wanted Navy. Now I know why. See this woman right here? I watched Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, every week as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, New York during the 1970s. Check out her uniform. When I was in the Navy, women weren't allowed on combatant vessels like frigates, destroyers, amphib assault carriers, nor were they allowed to work in fields considered hazardous, like the nuclear field. There was a fight in Washington starting in the 1990s when we were on the cusp of the Persian Gulf War to allow women to serve in combat. For the Navy, that meant allowing women on combatant vessels. So to find out if this could work, the Navy did a call out to the fleet for volunteers, women of all rates, to participate in an experiment to go on board combatant vessels on a TDY of 3 weeks. In 1992, I volunteered and was assigned to the USS Theodore Roosevelt CVN-71, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier still in service. I spent 3 weeks sleeping in a coffin bed, sliding back and forth in the communications center during choppy seas, and bathing in water contaminated with jet fuel. But the experience is something I'll never forget. Because of these efforts, the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff opened up 14,000 combat roles for women in 1994, and in 2013 removed all occupation barriers for women. When I was going through processing for my discharge, the PN, who was typing up the information on my DD-214, wanted to remove that time from my C duty section because it was only 17 days. I said I didn't care. I wanted that time recorded. He was trying to erase what I had done, and I wouldn't let him. I didn't spend 3 weeks on that ship for nothing. I did it so that women after me can have a chance to prove themselves just as capable as the men. And now the removal of those barriers may be under attack, and women will have to fight for their right to serve alongside men. Again, I'm not going to stand by and shrug my shoulders. I'll fight the best way I know how, with my intelligence.